Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to look at making an iPhone 8 slipcase. So here's the leather we're going to use. It's a Horween Dublin. It's a really nice waxy leather. It's got a gorgeous pull up. It's just a really nice leather to use. I really enjoy it. You can see it's quite pliable there at the corners, but in the meaty bit, yeah, it's really nice. Okay, so here I've already cut out the two rectangles we're going to need, the front and the back of the case. This is a radius template, I guess you'd call it. Again from Tandy, really useful. I think I'm using a 12.5 centimetre radius on this. As you can see, I'm just using the edge of the blade to line it up with the edges, and then I'm cutting in straight lines. I'm not trying to go round the corner, I'm just straight lines. It gives us the cleanest round corners, believe it or not. Again, doing this one. Now you'll notice I'm only doing the bottom corners, and I'll explain why later. So do that on each of them. Move on to the next step. Okay, so we're just gonna set our stitch margin now, which I'm setting to 5mm. I'm gonna run it down the sides around the bottom. Again here, if you watch, I'm turning the piece rather than turning the tool. I found that this gives me a more accurate line around the corners, and I'm not running all the way up to the top of the piece. I want to leave 3/4 of an inch of an opening at the top, so I'm going to run nearly there, but I'll pull off just before I get to 3/4 of an inch. Now I'll put my ruler in place, make sure it's lined up, and I'll mark that 3/4 of an inch. And this is why we don't round the top corners first, because trying to measure from a rounded corner can be a bit tricky, so just altering your order of operations helps you a little bit there. Now I'm just marking that top stitch hole. I'm actually going to make that a hole rather than just a mark, and that's going to be the start and finish of our stitching line. Again, doing the same on this one, 3/4 of an inch. Just means you can kind of open the top up a little bit and pull the phone out. Again, mark it off, and then put the hole in. Now we can go back and round our corners. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our beveler, our very fine beveler, and we're going to bevel the inside of the top edges. So from just behind that stitch hole that we made, all the way around to the one on the other side. So we can do that on the flesh side, then flip it over, and then bevel around the whole of the outside of the piece. I always like to try and bevel after I've made my stitch margins. It's easier to measure the stitch margin if you've got a square edge, and particularly on bigger pieces or with a bigger bevel. And this is just a fine bevel, so it's just going to roll that sharp corner off, and we'll go around and paint those edges later. Just brush your workspace down, make sure it's nice and clean. And now we're gonna go and stamp that logo. So this is my my granite slab I think it's granite, might be marble, I think it's granite. Really important that you use something like this, not just a wooden bench. When you're stamping any kind of tool in, you won't get the impression that you want if you don't use a granite slab. So here I'm just wetting both of the pieces. I'm only going to stamp one of them, but I found that when you wet the piece, it tends to harden up a little bit. And just so we have the consistency across the two pieces, I'm going to wet them both. It's really not necessary, but it's just something I like to do. So here, this is my my maker's mark, my stamp. It's got a little mark on it that says where the centre is. I'm just going to put that in what I think is the middle, then measure it. Make sure that marks in the middle, and then I'm going to measure from side to side, because in case we've twisted it, it's a bit tricky with it being a circle, so we have to do a few measurements to nudge it into the right place. So a few goes and hit it with a hammer. There we go. A couple of firm taps with the hammer, the maul even. We're good to carry on. Okay, so here we are. We're gonna just put this bit of protective scrap down, just to try and protect that mat underneath. I know it's a cutting mat, but I found that when you're punching through, sometimes it doesn't do nice things to the mat, and you can scratch the leather and whatever, blah blah blah. Here I'm just running down from that top hole that we marking off that hole a line of stitches. Then I'm going to come back a stitch before I actually hit it. So I'm marking off and then coming down a stitch, and then we're going to hit it through. And then just following the line, just going down, making sure we're through. Yep. And come down to the corner. And obviously this particular prick and iron won't get around that corner, so here's the two prong, same size stitch, just two prongs. I'm going to mark that off around the corner, do the same on the other corner, and thankfully Apple have made their iPhone 8 just big enough for me to fit a whole row of stitching in there without it's an even number of stitches, you know, they all fit. Sometimes you get them where you don't quite get full stitches, if that makes sense, but these do. So again, same on the next piece. Okay, we just make sure they line up. All those holes look like they marry up on both sides and on the bottom. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the edge paint on the top edges. So not all the way around, just the top edges. If we were to sew it and then try and edge paint those top edges, it would be really tricky. To do it accurately and cleanly. So I'm going to do those first, then we'll leave them to dry. We'll come back, we'll sand it down, do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times. Once I'm happy with the edge paint on those top edges, we'll go ahead and stitch it and edge paint around the rest of it, and that's our finished product. But we're going to save that for the next video. So thanks for watching. Check me out on bentleyleathercraft.com or on Instagram @bentleyleathercraft. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on part 2.